In this video, we're looking at this brand new Hosim. This is the Venom 8th scale brushless four-wheel drive monster truck. Just over $200. We're going to get it out of the box and then we're going to go give it a test drive. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Troy. This is Roadside RC. You'll tend to find me bashing or crawling or drifting or racing, plus doing product review videos and how-tos. Let's start by getting this Hosim vehicle out of the box. In the box comes the controller itself. Feels very similar to a lot of the controllers that Hosim's provided with some of their other vehicles. Has a lot of the standard things that you would need on the controller. You will need to provide the AA batteries. It has a QR code where you can actually do a 1-year warranty protection plan for the vehicle, a USB charger, a small handful of tools, a couple screwdrivers, the typical T-wrench, some spare body clips, and some nuts. That is good. A little handy dandy carrying case, along with a manual that's going to give you all of the different information that you need to understand how to drive the vehicle, plus some troubleshooting issues, but then really most importantly back here, part numbers and some exploded diagrams, all to show you how the vehicle's put together and how to get spare parts if you do end up needing them. And then of course there is the vehicle itself. Very hefty here, very kind of more heavyweight than I am used to seeing from some of the Hosim vehicles, and a little bit bigger. As a quick size comparison, here's the little small Hosim that actually made me kind of fall in love with this brand in the very beginning. Super crazy durable. I have recommended this one at about $100 to so many people to buy them. It just does well. It's a very fun beginner entry-level vehicle, and here is it compared to this new, what they're calling 8th scale vehicle. But let's be very, very clear. There's nothing about this vehicle that's 8th scale at all. Here is the Hosim vehicle itself. And here is the Red Cat Machete, which is a legitimate 8th scale vehicle. It completely continues to dwarf it. And then you can see how that continues to translate all the way down into the known and loved Hosim that I have had for years. So that is a very big difference in size. Hosim claiming that this one is 8th scale. Not about yeah, probably no. Can we claim that it's probably 10th? Yeah, that makes sense. But with that out of the way, let's see, what do we really see here with this vehicle? I see a massive, absolutely massive bumper that is very flexible, which means I think it's going to take a lot of impacts. Looks like it has a light bar sticking out of the front. Pretty big, beefy tires that look like they're pretty close into the body. Like the length versus width of this truck is a little bit odd to me. I kind of expected it might be a little bit wider. Looks like these tires want to get all in that body. Like it's kind of a narrow. Nice wing on the back, wheelie bar on the back. We definitely do have oil-filled shocks. Very, very stiff oil-filled shocks. Like these shocks feel like they have very thick fluid in them, and the springs are very stiff. When I drop it, this like doesn't hardly move. So very stiff suspension underneath it. This is the green version body. My understanding is it does come with a couple other different colors. Let's get the body off. It looks like we have some clear plastic that we're going to pull, and then we're going to see what's underneath it. As we get the body off, we start to see a lot of really interesting things under here. Lots of different colors, so we can see lots of different colors. We do see the wires here, so definitely some LEDs up front. Again, some pretty big and beefy front shocks on this thing, and the rear shocks. These do not look like they're going to be ones that are easy to bend. Now, I will notice something that immediately stands out to me. Maybe it stands out to you. This bright, bright blue shining through down here. These are metal control arms, both front and rear. In the RC world, this is a huge, huge no-no with any kind of basher. You want these control arms to be plastic so that they can flex and absorb impacts. You do not want these to be metal. I'd be very curious to see if they hold up as we're out driving it. A difference, however, is when you come out from the control arm and you get to these hubs, that is something that you do want in some form of metal. So it is really cool to see that those and the hexes here on the end are all some kind of metal with a nice coating on them. They look great. I really hate that they went ahead and put these as metal as well. Excited to see this corner and how good all those parts look. Behind these, nice adjustable metal turnbuckles and a full metal steering rack with integrated servo saver. That is a great design. You can see a center support ridge here, both front and rear, to help with the strength of the chassis. And speaking of which, that chassis is a nicely anodized coated, it looks like aluminum chassis. That is great, or steel, looking great there. 85 amp ESC, but unfortunately it is a ESC and receiver in one unit. That is a pretty common thing for vehicles. They're usually at a lower price point, is that the receiver and the ESC are combined into one. 85 amp should be pretty good power for this vehicle itself. And on the other side here, we have a 2800 kV motor. A lot of the times, if you're going to argue 8th scale, you're going to have a higher powered ESC than this, and you're going to have a bigger motor than this. So even the components that I'm seeing in here inside suggest that this thing is more 10th scale, not 8th scale. We do have a full-size servo, it looks like, which is nice. That means if you do have to replace it, and it is 3-wire, there's many options out there on the market for replacing it. We do have metal shock towers. We have adjustable body mounts. Like, all the rest of these components are definitely looking like they check a lot of the boxes. We'll just have to see how the car drives. And it does come with a 3S 2600 milliamp LiPo with the standard T or Dean's plug connector on it, which means you will have lots of choices in LiPo batteries and a very flexible mounting system over here, so you really can choose to put a lot of different kinds of batteries in this thing. Enough of me yapping, let's get the battery charged up and go test it. Well, that did not quite go as we had hoped. Do you remember earlier when I said one of the cardinal sins of RC bashing is putting aluminum or metal control arms of some form or fashion onto the basher? That's what happened. So let's break this down a little bit as to how this vehicle drove and what the overall impressions of it were. As we're driving out in the big grassy front yard, you could tell lots of power. Oh my gosh, this thing has all of the power. It was great. but turning, you could tell the narrow track width of this vehicle, it really liked to bicycle up. It really liked to bicycle up on two wheels, and we were hitting this front body almost non-stop with the front tires. You could hear it just eating into it. The other thing that was immediately noticed is great power, but the center differential that's in here is really loose. So the front tires would balloon up real big and lose traction compared to the rears. Probably good overall based on the amount of power this thing had in order to help it be controllable. So that was good. But again, where did all this power come from? We know that the ESC is not super powerful and that it is a 2800 kV motor. Even now, minutes and minutes after having driven it, the bottom of the chassis is almost too hot to touch, and the top of this motor is absolutely cooking. They must have this thing geared really high. You are going to burn this motor up very fast. They have it over geared to where you are working the motor too hard to get the speed that's in it. It's just not really the right setup for the vehicle, so the thing is just absolutely, like, seriously cooking right now. Now, looking at what happened here, we actually have two broken parts on this rear corner. We have the upper turnbuckle here, which has bananaed right here, this upper plastic piece, and it is absolutely snapped over. Now, it took all the force because this lower control arm couldn't give. But if you look at this really closely, you're going to have a little bit of toe in here in the rear, but this side has a lot more toe in. And what has happened here is we've actually bent the pin. There's a big screw that goes through this whole thing here and holds this control arm on to both of these panels. You can actually see that this screw goes at this angle and then turns at this angle as it then comes back out here. So that means this screw right here has this huge bend in it right here at this rear piece. We've hit and we've actually bent this whole piece in. Normally what would happen is this control arm would flex and absorb that impact. Instead, we're now in a situation where we're probably gonna have to cut this bolt off because it won't come out, get a whole new bolt and put it back in there. So we'll need to do that, and we'll need to replace this upper control arm before we get this thing driving again. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we don't put metal control arms on bashers. But let's say we take the whole metal control arm durability piece out of the equation and talk about how the truck did otherwise. The truth is, otherwise, front bumper took some hits and did fine. The truck did backflips. It would pull wheelies. It was really fun to drive. It really put a smile on my face, and I had a blast driving it. But it was just short-lived based on kind of a flaw with the overall design. So for just over $200 with the current coupon that's on Amazon, it's still actually a pretty decent deal, and it's a bunch of fun. But I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna say it again. The $100 Hosim Basher, it's still the one to get. This is still the one. It's brushless, it's fast, it does absolutely great, it's super durable. I've had a blast with this thing for years and years. It's still the one that I hand off when, like, kids in the neighborhood come over. I still put a battery of 2S LiPo in this thing and let them rip it and have fun. It's so lightweight that it just bounces and it doesn't break. So still, top tip, buy this one. Consider this one only if you're willing to maybe replace some parts occasionally as it goes, and if you really want that bigger power that it delivers. So with that, I have a whole playlist of vehicle reviews. We'll leave that right over here so you can check out some other options that you may want to consider instead of this one for a budget basher. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.